My name is Clea Good, I'm 29, and I write code for companies that can't decide what they are until something I build finally works. At home, I'm not the fixer. I'm furniture, present, useful, and easy to forget until someone needs a surface to drop their keys. Easter dinner looks like a commercial for a family we never were. The ham is glazed to a mirror, the TV plays baseball highlights my dad calls ambiance, phones light faces better than the chandelier ever could. My mother scrolls with the determination of a woman knitting a scarf from other people's lives. My sister Jessica spoon feeds carrots to her toddler without looking up. My brother Kyle walks the perimeter with a beer, gravity off by a few degrees, never landing. I try the classic approach, smile first, then words. I've got news, I say, passing the ham as if it were a microphone. The room doesn't turn, the highlight reel does. A back cracks, a cheer rises. My mother hums at something that isn't me. I wait for the space that follows attention. It doesn't come, so I build one. I got an offer, I say, real one. The words sit there, hot out of the oven and cool fast. That's nice, honey, Mom says, thumb tugging the screen like she's pulling thread through fabric. Dad doesn't look away from the TV. Ambitious play, he says. To the game or me, hard to tell. Jessica wipes a dot of carrot from her kid's chin, smiles at the kid like he did something brilliant. Kyle opens the fridge and studies it like a textbook. I add a little theater, the way you tap a glass before a toast. I might take it. Forks continue their soft percussion. The TV narrates someone else's win. In a pinch of self-defense I've perfected over the years, I make a joke to keep the sting from bleeding through. Quick intro, in case we skipped it. I'm Clea. No one laughs, not even me. My plate is a small stage no one is watching. I cut a slice that's too neat, because neatness is the only control I have. The ham's surface catches light and throws it back toward the ceiling, a bright flare that no one follows. I take a bite and taste sugar and salt and the hollow shape of a sentence that dies halfway to the table. Maybe you know rooms like this, loud, bright, and somehow empty. If you do, tell me where you're watching from. I want to know the city that taught you to speak up, or the town where you learned to sit still until your own voice sounded foreign. 2 weeks after that dinner, the house smelled like buttercream and candles that smoked more than they glowed. My mother's birthday drew the cousins and the good plates. I arrived with a store box disguised as homemade and the same sentence reheated. When the cake made its circle and the song thinned into claps, I said, I accepted the offer. I kept my voice even, like reading a label. I'll be moving this summer. Cut generous, Mom said to Dad, then smiled at the frosting roses as if they had delivered the news. That bow, she told Jessica, who was showing her a photo of the toddler in a hat. Adorable. Dad's knife hit porcelain and screeched a little. Phoenix is hot, he said to the cake, not me. The pay is good, I added, placing plates, aiming for eye contact and catching only reflections. And I'm ready. That's great, sweetie, Mom said, tapping a heart on Jessica's phone. Kyle asked if there was more soda. Someone turned the TV back on in the next room. I chewed a bite that tasted like sugar and a small private decision. The candles smoked themselves out. Memorial Day weekend came with the usual grill and the argument between lighter fluid and patience. Smoke lifted in a clean column into a sky so blue it felt like a promise I couldn't cash. I tried again, casual but not unclear. I'm signing the lease this week, I said, leaning against the patio rail. Move date's June 15th. Dad flipped a burger, checked the char like a coin he was willing to keep. Good for you, he said. Watch the speeders in the desert. Yeah, I said, and smiled because this is where jokes live when there's no room for conversation. Heard they're fast. Across the yard, Kyle called. After this, I need help with my setup. HDMI's weird again. Dad nodded to him so quickly it clipped the end of my sentence. Got you, he said, spatula already moving like an RSVP. I laughed, the short, surprised kind that doesn't find company. My life was leaving the state. We were prioritizing a cable. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed and texted the family group chat. New address. I typed it clean, no abbreviations, no room for error. Move next weekend. If you need anything before I go, tell me. I hit send and watched the small gray check turn firm. 2 hours later, Jessica posted a picture of a construction paper sun her toddler had glued to a plate. Mom hearted it with 3 exclamation points. Kyle dropped a pizza meme that arrived like a fly in an open kitchen. My message stood there like an invited guest no one had greeted. I took a screenshot. I named a folder on my phone Receipts, because I'm a woman who organizes proof even when no one asks for it. I filed the image away and told myself I was documenting, not keeping score. The difference felt like a thin thread I didn't dare tug. The day before the truck, I went by the house to say goodbye with my body since my words hadn't stuck. Mom worked a grocery list in looping letters. Tomorrow, she said, pen not pausing. Have a safe trip, honey. It's 2 days, I said. I'll stop in New Mexico for the night. Get water, she answered, writing the word milk, and I realized advice could be as automatic as breath. In the garage, Dad had the tools laid out in a perfect grid. I stood a second before speaking, like waiting for a machine to finish its cycle. I'm leaving at 6. Yep, he said, not unkind, not exactly present. Good luck out there. I nodded because there are only so many ways to push a door that never fully opens. In the driveway, I sat in my truck with my hands on the wheel and felt the house behind me like a museum I'd just toured. Interesting, familiar, and emptied of me. I looked at my phone, at the quiet group chat, at the folder named for proof. Then I turned the key and let the engine answer back in a voice everyone could hear. I pulled onto the interstate at 6 a.m., a thermos of coffee in the cup holder, and a box of kitchen things clicking softly in the back. Morning light stroked the highway flat, like someone had ironed the country between me and the next life. The miles unspooled, Ohio greens into plains, then the hard red shoulder of the Southwest. Truckers blinked their turn signals like steady little promises. I kept pace with the long river of cars, the radio low, my playlist doing the talking that wasn't welcome at the table I'd left. By sunset the first day, the sky went bruise purple over New Mexico. I parked at a motel with a dying neon sign and a soft-spoken desk clerk who slid me a key as if I were a secret worth keeping. In the room, the air conditioner coughed and then found a rhythm. I lay on the bed in my shoes, stared at the textured ceiling, and realized the silence didn't press. It made room. I texted Dan, safe, tomorrow, the rest. He sent 3 confetti emojis and, proud of you. I believed him without having to swallow it first. Phoenix met me the next afternoon with heat like a firm hand on my chest. Surprising, then steadying. The apartment I'd leased by video was smaller than the camera suggested and kinder than my fears. The fan hummed like a soft airplane. I stacked plates in cabinets, folded towels into a closet that smelled like new paint and a little dust. From the balcony, a tall saguaro lifted its arms at the horizon, as if counting the ways the sky could be blue. I took photos the first week. The view at sunset, a paper cup from a taco place that ruined me for every taco before it, my work badge hanging crooked from a lanyard. I sent them to the family group chat one by one, not needy, just present. The check marks appeared without echo. Jessica posted a picture of construction paper again. Mom tapped hearts on other people's news. Kyle found a video of someone throwing a TV off a roof and wrote mood. After the 3rd try, my thumb hovered over the camera icon and moved on. Silence isn't always a wall. Sometimes it's a mirror. I decided to stop practicing my face in it. I started walking at twilight. The heat loosened its grip then, and the sidewalks glowed faintly like they remembered daylight. I learned which streets threw shade and which didn't care. I bought a hat without asking anyone if it looked good. On Saturdays, I hiked the easy trails, the kind that eased your breath without demanding your knees. The city spoke in small, practical ways: trash pickup days, grocery stores with misters over the produce, neighbors who nodded from behind sunglasses. Month 3, Dan showed up at Sky Harbor with a carry-on and a grin that made my place look bigger. We learned the city by foot and by the taste of salsa. In the mornings, he made coffee in my little kitchen and handed me a mug like a vote of confidence. One afternoon, we stood on my balcony and watched a monsoon roll in from far off, a gray sheet moving over the orange. "Your family will catch up or they won't," he said. "You don't have to flash red to be real." I let the words land and stay. "Then I'm done flashing," I said. We clinked mugs to that. Sophie, the ex who haunted the edges of his history, liked one of my Phoenix photos and left a comment. "Desert sunsets fade fast." I read it twice, looking for the helpful part. There wasn't one. I blocked her, not for drama, just to tidy the room I was decorating inside my head. I tried the family chat once more, a picture from a trail at dawn, the city laid out like a map I was finally learning. When nothing came back, I put my phone face down and let the quiet be a choice I was making. Work took a shape that fit my hands. My manager said I had lead energy, and I laughed later because it sounded like a battery. On Sundays, I washed sheets, cooked enough for the week, and wrote down the small victories. Slept well, fixed the leaky faucet, found a bookstore that shelves by feeling instead of genre. Some nights, the desert sang a low electric note you could only hear if you stood very still. I stood still and listened. I was here. I was not furniture. I was a person in a place that noticed when I turned on the light. At exactly 1 year, my phone lit up with my mother's name. I almost let it go dark again, but curiosity has its own gravity. I answered. "Where are you?" she asked, voice brisk and already offended. "You missed Emily's birthday again, and Memorial Day, and what is going on with you?" "I'm at home," I said. "Home? You're not here." "I live in Arizona," I said. "I moved a year ago." The line went quiet in a way that made the air in my apartment feel heavier. "No, you didn't," she said finally, like fact could be corrected by tone. "You never said that." "I told you at Easter, at your birthday, on the patio on Memorial Day. I texted the address, I said goodbye in the kitchen." "You should have made it clearer." "How much clearer can a street number be?" I asked. Silence. Paper rustled on her end, as if she were looking for a better script. We walked our usual circle. She was busy, she sees a lot of messages. Why didn't I push harder? I told her I wouldn't be pushing anymore. She hung up first. Jessica called next. "Mom's upset," she started. No hello. "You blindsided her." "I said it 5 times, I answered. "That's not a blindside, that's a billboard. You could have reminded us." "I did," I said, in words with vowels and everything. She exhaled the way people do when they think they're being reasonable. "You're being dramatic." "I'm being specific." She muttered something about the kids and got off the phone like a person leaving a room without closing the door. A text from Kyle. "WTF, you really moved?" I stared at the 3 letters and felt something inside me tilt. I put the phone down. I made tea. The kettle whistled until it didn't. An hour later, Dad called. "Can we talk like adults?" he said, which is how he begins sentences that mean I should stop having feelings. "We can," I said. "Your mother's been crying all afternoon," he said. "You made her feel foolish." "I told you 5 times," I said. "Name one thing that happened in my life this year." He was quiet long enough for me to hear the refrigerator cycle kick in. "That's not fair," he said at last. "It's the fairest thing I've asked in a while," I said. He cleared his throat, settled into the voice he uses for tax advice and household policies. "Look, Clea, this isn't about memory. It's about priorities. The sentence landed like a well-aimed stone. He wasn't trying to hurt me. That made it worse. Right, I said, because there was nothing else to say. Thank you for finally saying it out loud. After the calls, the apartment held me the way a good chair does. Plain, honest. I sat at the little table by the window and wrote what I remembered onto a single page. I listed dates and rooms and the exact words I had used. I wrote Easter offer and birthday accepted, and patio lease signed, and group text address, and kitchen goodbye. I added the timestamps I could pull from photos and messages. I printed it. The paper came out warm, smelling faintly of ink and new certainty. There was a cheap black frame in the closet from when I thought art would fix plain walls. I slid the page inside and set it by the door where keys and truth belong. The title at the top read, 5 Times I Told You. My phone buzzed on the table until it gave up. I watched the light move across the floor as the day burned down, watched it hit the frame and catch on the glass. I thought about the year behind me, heat, trails, tacos, a job that fit, and the year before that, tables, screens, the soft percussion of forks. I thought about my father's word, the one that cracked everything open without raising its voice. Priorities. I locked the door, not against anyone, but for myself. The frame stood where I could see it when I left and when I came home, a plain object that made one promise. If anyone tried to tell me I hadn't spoken, I could point to the place where I kept the sound. That evening, the light in my apartment went the soft color of late peaches. I set the framed page by the door and stood with my hands on my hips like I'd just finished building a shelf. The paper looked back at me without apology. 5 lines, 5 rooms, 5 chances. I made dinner simple, eggs and a salad, because clarity doesn't need garnish. Dan knocked, then let himself in with the spare key I'd finally trusted him with. He held something under his arm, wrapped in brown paper and tape that had lost the fight. I brought you a present, he said, grinning like a kid who knew the surprise was good. I already have one, I said, nodding at the frame by the door. This one's for that one, he said. He tore the paper off with more enthusiasm than finesse and revealed a small wooden frame, the kind you can feel even before you touch it. Oak, sanded smooth, corners mitered true. Handmade? I asked. Garage-made, he said, but straight enough. He slid the list from the cheap frame, replaced it with care, then uncapped a pen and added a line at the bottom in small, neat letters. Number 6, you told yourself, and you believed you. We stood there long enough for the ink to dry. Something in my chest, knotted since before I could name it, loosened a fraction without undoing itself. I like that one best, I said. Me too, he answered. Evidence isn't for arguments. It's for the nights when old doubts come back wearing new clothes. We ate at the counter, knees bumping. He asked if I wanted to call them back. I shook my head. Not tonight, I said. Maybe not for a while. I wasn't angry. Anger is hot and quick. What I felt was quiet and exact, like measuring flour with a knife. When he left, I set my phone to Do Not Disturb from 8 to 8. The screen obeyed. A group call tried to muscle through and failed. The silence felt earned, not empty. I brushed my teeth, turned off the lamps, and slept without dreaming. In the morning, my apartment looked like itself, small, tidy, honest. Work emails waited. I answered the ones that needed me and left the others to learn patience. At lunch, I walked to the bookstore that sorts by mood and picked a novel I could read in 3 sittings. On the way back, I bought a plant that had the courage to be green in the desert. The clerk said it would live if I watered it once a week and spoke kindly. I promised to do both. By afternoon, 3 new messages sat under the group thread. Call us. We need to talk. This isn't fair. I stared at the last one and thought of my father's word. Priorities. Fair, I decided, isn't an apology I give myself. It's a schedule. I moved the thread to a folder I named Later. I didn't mute it out of spite. I muted it out of respect for the person who pays my rent. That night I cooked something slow and forgiving, beans in the Dutch oven, onions taking their time to get sweet. I wrote 5 lines in my notebook under the date. Walked, worked, watered, read, rested. The list wasn't for proof, it was for balance, so I could see I was a person with a full day that didn't require permission to count. The next weekend, Dan and I went for a dawn hike. The trail switchbacked like a careful conversation. At the overlook, we watched the city wake, a soft grid hum under a sky that knew how to make room. "You okay?" he asked. "I am," I said. "It's strange. Saying less takes more strength." "That's the thing about boundaries," he said. "They look like fences from the outside. From the inside, they're chairs." We sat a while longer and let the light climb our faces. On the way down, my phone buzzed against my leg. I didn't check it. If it was work, it could wait 1 mile. If it was home, it could wait 2. Back at the apartment, I watered the new plant and set it near the framed page by the door. Green beside ink, living beside proof. When the screen lit with another call, I watched it blink until it gave up and returned the room to quiet. Not revenge, I thought, washing my hands. Just symmetry. I turned the frame a hair to catch the afternoon sun and went on with my day. They texted first, careful and formal. Would it be all right if we visited? Just a weekend. We'll stay at a hotel. I read it twice, felt my ribs loosen, then typed yes. The dates landed in early October, the kind of week when Phoenix light turns soft at the edges and forgives even hard corners. At the airport, my mother looked smaller, or maybe it was the way she finally looked at me. "Clea," she said, my name like a question and a relief. She hugged me in 2 beats, tentative, then tight. My father offered his standard handshake, then pulled me into a half hug that tried to be better than habit. "You look good," he said. "Arizona suits you." I drove them down palm-lined streets to their hotel. Mom pressed her palm to the window, cataloging everything. "It's all so open," she murmured, as if width were a language she'd never learned. She asked to see my place right away. "Tomorrow," I said. "Tonight, let's just have dinner." She nodded. We sat under string lights on a downtown patio that hummed with weekends. A guitarist in the corner made every song sound like a beginning. "How's work?" Dad asked, cutting into his burrito like it might misbehave. "Good," I said. "I was promoted last month." I let it sit a second. "I lead a small team now." His eyebrows lifted, surprised into pride. "That's impressive." Mom put a hand to her heart. "We're proud of you," she said. She said it like a sentence she rehearsed and meant. After dinner, I dropped them at the hotel and drove home past the mural I love, the one with a coyote looking straight at you like it knows. In my apartment, the framed page by the door caught a sliver of lamplight. I straightened it without thinking and slept like someone who had done exactly enough. In the morning, they waited in the lobby with coffees and nerves. I let them climb the stairs ahead of me. At my door, I paused a breath and opened into what I had built. Small, tidy, honest. Mom stepped in first and stopped. Her eyes landed on the frame by the door before the couch or the cactus or the trail photos. She read the title out loud, barely above a whisper. 5 times I told you. "You kept this," she said. "For a while," I answered. It was the only thing that made me feel real. She reached out, then pulled her hand back as if the glass might be warm. Her eyes filled but didn't spill. "I'm sorry," she said. No decoration, just the words. I didn't know how much I wasn't seeing. Dad stood by the window with his hands in his pockets, looking over the parking lot to the far ridge. "This suits you," he said. "Feels grounded." "It is," I said. We walked the rooms like a tour, the bookshelf sorted by feeling, the kitchen with the good pan finally earning its keep, the plant that had decided to live. Mom sat on the couch and looked at me like I was a picture she'd been trying to bring into focus. "Do you have friends here?" she asked. "People who check on you?" "I do," I said, "and I check on myself." We drove to Camelback after the heat lifted. The trail rose in careful switchbacks, and we let the pace choose the conversation. Halfway up, Dad stopped, breathing hard, and looked out at the spread of city and dust and sky. "I get it," he said. "It's quiet, but it isn't empty." "Exactly," I said. "That's why I stayed." We ate takeout at my place that night, tacos on the coffee table, candles doing their small best. Conversation found an easy middle, work stories, hiking missteps, a memory that made all three of us laugh at the same moment. When they stood to go, Mom hugged me at the door and touched the frame with 2 fingers, like a blessing she didn't know she knew. "Thank you for letting us come." "Thank you for coming," I said. In the hallway, Dad turned back. "Can we visit again? Maybe in a few months. No pressure." "Sure," I said. "We can make that work." I closed the door, leaned my forehead against the wood, and listened to their footsteps fade down the stairwell. The apartment was still mine, and for the first time, home and family didn't feel like competing maps. They overlapped, right there at the threshold, where I kept my keys and the piece of paper that told the truth. After they flew home, the week settled into a new shape. Sunday morning, a text from Mom. "Good morning, honey. How's the weather out there?" It arrived at 8:07, then again the next week at 8:04, like a promise practicing punctuality. Dad followed with links, beginner desert trails, foot care for hikers, how to patch drywall. Jessica sent photos of the kids with small captions. They miss their aunt. I answered in complete sentences and left room at the end for more. The group chat, once a quiet hallway, learned how to echo. At work, my team found its rhythm. We shipped a release that worked the first time, and no one said miracle, which felt like respect. I wrote documentation like I was planting trees I wanted to sit under later. My manager called me into a room with too much glass and said, "You have a good way of steadying the table." I went home and wrote that down. In November, Mom called with a question shaped like a dare. "We're doing Christmas at home," she said. "Will you come?" The year before, no one noticed I was absent. Now they were asking. "I'll think about it," I said, and did. I pictured the house, the TV, the choreography of old habits. I also pictured the visit they'd just made. String lights, a hike, a quiet that wasn't empty. I booked a flight. On Christmas morning, I walked through their door, and the room went still the way good rooms do before a toast. Jessica crossed the space fast and hugged me without talking. Kyle high-fived, then hugged, then laughed at himself for both. Mom came from the kitchen, flour on her apron, and cried in a way that didn't ask me to fix anything. Dad put a hand on my shoulder, then both arms. "Welcome home," he said, and for the first time the word didn't feel like a test I had to pass. We did the day the way it should be done. Coffee before presents, the smallest person opens first, people watch each other's faces. They asked about my job and listened past the headline. Dad wanted to know what a sprint was. Mom wanted to know if I was eating right. Jessica wanted to know if the desert ever got truly cold. I told them about morning hikes and beans in the Dutch oven and the bookstore that sorts by feeling. At night, I slept in the old room and felt like a guest by choice. January sharpened the calendar. On a Tuesday, my director asked if I had a minute and gave me more than that. A second promotion, more people, a bigger problem to solve. I took a picture of the new view and sent it to the group chat as a test and a note. Replies came in under an hour. Mom, so proud of you, sweetheart. Dad, well deserved. Jessica, You inspire me. Kyle, you're killing it, sis. I cried in the quiet way, into a paper towel, eyes open. Spring slid in. On a breezy Thursday, Seattle called. Title up a rung, scope wider, pay that said the market knew my name. I sat with it like you sit with a strong cup of coffee you don't want to waste. That night, I told Mom. I braced for the old script. She laughed, light and relieved. Seattle's beautiful, she said. You should go where your life is. When I leave, I said, careful, I'll come back to visit, and you can come to me. We will, she said. We can do that now. Before I left Phoenix, they visited once more. We ate at the patio under the same strings of light, walked one last trail, stood on my balcony, and watched the sunset make its slow case for staying. At the airport drop-off, Dad handed me an envelope. Open later, he said. I did, mid-flight, somewhere above a patchwork of states. A card in my mother's hand. We're proud of what you do and who you are. A check for $5,000 with a memo line that read, for your new trail. I folded the note into my wallet and looked out the window. The country below was lit like a map. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was leaving something behind to save myself. I felt like I was bringing my whole self with me. Seattle started with rain that sounded like a patient drummer on my window. I unpacked the old things, mugs, the good pan, the framed page Dan refit with oak, and found them new places in a smaller, taller apartment. The view was ships moving like slow ideas. I hung a second hook by the door and set both frames there, the list that kept me honest, and a photo from Camelback where my parents and I are windblown and grinning like we'd just agreed on something true. Sunday morning, right on time, Mom called. We talked about nothing important, the farmer's market near her, the price of eggs near me, how the dog across her street had learned to sit. She asked if Seattle was as gray as people said. I told her gray here was generous. It made every lamp feel like a small favor. Dad broke in on speaker to say he'd mailed me an article about coastal trails. He didn't need to. The call was the article. In June, Jessica floated the idea of a family trip back to Arizona. You pick the hikes, she said. We'll go at your pace. We met there in the heat, rented a cabin with a porch that looked out at Red Rock and the slow spin of hawks. We ate tacos at the stand I used to visit alone. The kids collected stones and gave them names. At sunset, we drove to my old balcony and leaned on the rail like we were listening for a rumor we all wanted to believe. That night, Mom and I sat on the porch steps with our feet on warm wood. The air smelled like dust and orange peel. This place is special, she said. It saved me, I said. She shook her head. You saved you. This place just held the light. We were quiet long enough to hear a coyote somewhere below say one clean sentence and stop. I turned to her. If you ever stop seeing me again, I said, gentle but not joking, I'll move to Alaska. She laughed, then wiped at her eyes. Then we'll learn telescopes. Back in Seattle, the weeks arranged themselves in workable rows. Team meetings that ended on time, groceries carried up 4 flights, runs along the water when the rain took a breath. On a Sunday that felt like any other and somehow like a gift, I finished the call with Mom and looked at the 2 frames by the door. Paper beside picture, proof beside presence. I used to think love meant staying, no matter how small you had to make yourself to fit. Now I think it's this: leaving when you must, returning when you choose, and being met by people who lift their eyes. I locked the door and caught my reflection in the glass, ordinary, awake. I wasn't furniture anymore. I was seen, and for me, that was enough.